First of all, welcome. Thank you for AT&T hosting and IMTC and Lifesize for giving me an opportunity to share some experiences today. As I put this presentation together, I found it very difficult to really figure out as to what to deliver. We've been doing video conferencing for about 15 years plus. We've had email obviously much longer than that. So many of the components of UC we've had for a really long period of time. We've made changes, we've brought things together, but I love to play. So we usually run projects in many parallel paths. We may actually introduce it to the population in SAS long before it's really ever ready for production, simply so we can better understand the user interfaces and the components necessary to move forward. So lots of little things going on. I have a lot of areas of responsibility, as we'll see in a minute. So it gets very interesting in the company. The other thing I want to put a disclaimer in, as Pfizer did and several others, this is based on Russ's world. Russ's world has a tendency to change from day to day as Russ learns new stuff, be that stuff that doesn't work or new information. So these are experiences and thoughts based from my world. There's obviously going to be people that will disagree. There's probably things I don't know from the vendors. And there's probably a lot of things I don't know about the technology. But what I do know is some of the stuff that what SAS is looking to do. And I would have to say the biggest change we've had in the 15 years is when we started video conferencing 14 years ago with the Polycom ViewStation 512, executive management involvement was little. That's changed. About 4 or 5 years ago, the executives really got on this. It's a pull, it's no longer a push from my perspective. All I have to do is deliver a solution. And that's the key, but I got to deliver a solution that's going to work. So with that said, really quick agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about SAS, give you a little bit of background, so it'll set the perspective, so as we get into the challenges discussion and the directions discussion, and then we've already had the conclusion discussion. We had that yesterday at the close of business, so that probably won't be much changed. Really quickly, SAS, I feel really small now following HP. Simple 11,000 employees to over 300.
You're not alone.
Huh?
You're not alone.
I feel really small, so not even really sure why I'm up here now. But we are a leader in business analytics software. We're about 2.3 billion in 2009. We did have another positive year. Actually, we've had 35 years of positive growth. We're headquarters in Cary, North Carolina. So we're a privately held company, so we're not traded on the stock. We have 50,000 customers. I would say we have about 90% of the Fortune 100 companies as customers. We've been in business for 35 years, and we have 400 offices scattered out over 123 countries. That doesn't include the work from home organization, which is topping in at about 2,000 plus employees that work from home. And assuming that of those 11,000 employees, about 40% of them are sales. So they're on the road all the time anyway, may not just be officially working from home. I work for a division called Information Systems Division. We actually report to R&D, which is an actually interesting path because our job isn't just about supporting the company, it's about supporting the product and being responsible for IT-based components within the SAS world. We're about 500 employees globally, and we cover the major categories: MIS, IT, web, and help desk. Within the actual ITS department, we're about 200 employees globally, and it's all the major IT stuff: LAN, WAN, communications, client server storage. The area that I'm responsible for is global communications. I'm responsible for about 35 people, of which 25 of them are outside of the Cary area, so I'm a user of the services. I also work from home. But I have all the major technology areas associated to UC. The only thing I don't have right now is Exchange, and that's even being discussed. But I'm responsible for all networking outside of Cary, North Carolina. I'm also responsible for internet connectivity in Cary, North Carolina. I have all other hardware support for the 400 offices. I have all the conferencing utilities. Unified Communications was moved to me last year. It's really kind of a dumb group. The only person in it is me. And the whole objective is that I expect telephone and conferencing and stuff to move into that infrastructure somewhere down the road, and we'll rechange the organization. And then I have some hobbies. I'm responsible for most of the Asia Pacific IT, our R&D centers. And then I've also have trade show events or SAS events. So, just a quick timeline. We've been doing this for a long time. In 1995, we deployed our Avaya PBX. It's still our communications vehicle today. It's gone through several iterations in its tender, but we, at this point, have no reason to replace it. At least Avaya hasn't given us a reason yet to replace it, even though I have looked at replacing it. But realize, the next slide will give you an idea of the reason why we probably won't. We did all the audio conferencing on-premise and off-premise. We did our on-premise bridge for about 8 years. It killed me. Added a little bit of gray. And in 2007, we actually started a very large globalization standard within IT, where we are trying to take standard, what's being done at headquarters, and implement it everywhere in SAS. Lots of reasons, cost-effective, support reasons, et cetera, et cetera. That's been a huge effort since 2007. And of course, 2010 was when we really started looking at a lot of the UC stuff, even though we've been doing some stuff for a while, and we'll be looking to do Aura, looking at links and several other things.
Is your audio conferencing primarily an internal bridge or an external service? Or?
Today it's an external service. We switched in 2007 due to cost. It was a better business proposition. I also had some international, because of the globalization stuff, problems I had to solve from a cost factor. So we currently do business with Intercall as an outsourced service, and at this point, not looking to change that. Same with, we do WebEx for our web conferencing. We were a Placeware user for many years until Microsoft decided to buy Placeware. In terms of the globalization, this is where we stand with all of those areas with Avaya Voice. About a year and a half ago, we placed some stakes in the sand and said, these are the tools that we're going to move forward with. This is what we're going to do globally. So this represents where we stand in the globalization of these categories. 65% of all SAS employees today are currently using Avaya Voice as their communications model. We've got 100% of our people doing IM and desktop video conferencing and presence via Microsoft OCS, eventually to be links. We have 40% of the world converted over to using Intercall. 100% is already using WebEx, and that actually went in from day one. Life Size represents 80% of our video conferencing room-based systems. We are not in immersive telepresence yet. WAN, we're currently about 50% complete with our MPLS migration that we're working on.
Is it your goal to drive that to 100?
Yes.
Not zero?
Yeah. All of these are the goals to drive all of these to 100% from a globalization perspective. And our WAN network today is currently VPN IPsec, and we've actually been very successful with doing voice and video across that VPN IPsec infrastructure, SAS to SAS. What our problem is the unpredictability. At 9 to 10, it may work fine. From 10 till 11, it may not. And that's associated with our inability to control jitter, which is what the MPLS network will hopefully give us the ability to do. It isn't going to change latency, but it will give us the ability to at least control jitter. And then, of course, we're already 100% Cisco. That's been a standard in place for quite a while. We still do have a few small offices in Asia Pacific that'll get converted this year. We're also 100% QoS on our LANs, and we're 100% multicast capable today on our network.
Question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a question like with the Avaya Voice. So 65% Avaya Voice. What about the other 35%? Are they using something else? Or 100% of the people, which is 65% of your company, are using voice, and it is Avaya Voice?
Everybody has voice. So basically the 35% that's left are all running Mitel, Alcatel, some other voice solution that they implemented prior to the globalization that started in 2007. And because the lifespan of some of the PBXs is 7 to 8 years, what we decided to do, instead of spending money to force the change, we're going through a migration process. So as each PBX comes up for replacement, we force the issue to bring Avaya, still do a competitive bid. We still look at other alternatives. But if Avaya ends up being equal to or better than any other quote that we get, the office has to justify with me why they want to go with some other solution other than Avaya. And all of this is being based off the fact that we tried to do IP trunking. I'm trying to drive all voice communications within SAS via our data network. We tried for years to get Avaya and Cisco trunking working, Avaya and Mitel trunking working, so it could drive H323 adoption, and we just finally gave up. So we just changed the model to say that we'll get it working. We have it working with Avaya to Avaya. It's simple, Avaya to Avaya, and that's part of what drives some of this. So the cost savings in per minute cost between the companies, specifically international, the headquarters, helps pay for the results of the hardware upgrades.
Could you make a couple of comments about the Microsoft OCS 100% line? Because you show IM presence and desktop video conferencing.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You're not, I assume you're not implying that 100% of your people are using desktop video conferencing, or are you?
100% of our people are eligible to use any of these services. So we've basically standardized on Microsoft OCS. It was originally put there for IM and presence. We had an issue with public IMs and our inability to control the directory and who the person was. So anybody could be Jim Goodnight, who is the CEO of our company. So we brought IM in, OCS 1, we implemented their solution. We own the directory, we can now control.
And so that would, I assume you're talking there about Microsoft's desktop video conferencing
Yes.
implementation.
Yes.
And so do you have the capability for those users to interface to your life-size or Polycom systems?
Yes, and that's something that I'll bring up a little bit later, but yes, we worked with LifeSize, or better yet, LifeSize worked with us, and we now have a successful OCS SIP solution to our LifeSize global room systems.
What kind of collaboration that you folks at SAS do in your LifeSize and OCS platform? Is it mostly internal technical folks that are doing this? Because you said you're not ready for immersive yet.
Well, the problem with immersive, and I've mentioned this to a couple of people in closing, I meet with our CEO about every 6 months, and we have three topics we talk about in terms of immersive. We talk about the cost of the systems, which, while it's an issue, and they're coming down, it really wasn't the big issue. We've talked about bandwidth consumption, and when we started talking about original bandwidth, I think Cisco had their immersive system at 45 megabits, and we looked at the cost of supporting a 45 megabit connection in our India office. It was over $2 million a year just for us to support the bandwidth there, which it's not going to happen. The third thing, and probably the most important thing, is interoperability. In other words, he says, if I go spend all of this money, will that machine do everything I want for it to do from a video conferencing perspective? And the answer to that question is no at this point. So we've never made the dive into immersive telepresence, even though the new building that's coming open at the end of this month has 4 rooms in it that have been outfitted to support immersive telepresence in the future. We've not made that step.
Have you looked at the life-size solution for that?
Yes, we have. But at this point, we just haven't stepped down that multi-codec direction.
You certainly don't need 45 megabits for that.
No, absolutely not. And again, I've done research. I've looked at Halo, I've looked at Cisco, I've looked at LifeSize, I've looked at Polycom, and while I'll have an opinion, we just haven't made the decision, because I also don't know what the business criteria would be for this. You know, if we're going to outfit telepresence and we're going to put it in EBCs, executive briefing centers that we own, I may make one decision, because it would always be those briefing centers talking to each other. If we're going to do it, and we're just going to do it in terms of a room where we can video conference with anybody with it, I would probably make a different decision. So it's really going to be based on the dynamics of what the actual criteria are for why we would step off into the immersive telepresence. So.
I'm sorry, what was the percentage of the people who have OCS, I get 100%, have working cameras? And then if they have working cameras and good audio, what percentage of the people use video conferencing?
Okay. Not all the people have cameras. Okay. I would say we're probably at about 40 to 50% of the people with cameras, but it's not an issue that they don't have it. It's just an issue they have to request it, and they will be given a camera. So it's really based on need, not an IT holdback. I would say of the people that have it, I would say that we have, I would say probably almost all of that 40% probably uses it multiple times per month, if not multiple times per day. And I'm one of those people that use it multiple times per day. It depends on the group. federation is a bit of an issue. So if we keep it SAS to SAS communications, it's done because we have a lot of international people that report to managers in the US. So the managers meet with them during their business day, but they do it from home using desktop video conferencing into the LifeSize system that's installed in that office or to their desktop video conferencing solution. So we have quite a few people using it. Our sales organization, our VP of sales, which I will mention here, he started a project where all salespeople, when they communicate, have to do it via desktop video conferencing. He wanted that personalized approach. He wanted people to see each other. They don't see each other that much, so he was trying to create a family philosophy. And as I indicated in Enterprise Connect last week, they reduced their meeting times by 30% by doing this, because now everybody's more attentive, because somebody made a comment the other day that you multitask. Well, when you're multitasking, you're not paying attention to every detail. By bringing this, you can't multitask. You have to pay attention so the meetings move a wee bit quicker. And they're just trying to create that synergy there so that when they do meet each other once a year or whatever, they at least have an idea of what people look like. So I don't intend to spend a lot of time on the business initiatives, because I don't think from this perspective we really have implemented complete UC business initiatives. A lot of these have been implemented a few years ago, but we have WebEx support centers integrated deeply into our tech support organization. Education is using our multimedia solutions, conferencing solutions to provide customer paid training, and it's integrated into the system. Even labs, testing, installation, their classes are done via this mechanism. I just mentioned our North America sales organization and the drive of the VP there. We actually wrote our own internal phone dialer, which actually works in terms of what we call remote call control that Microsoft offers today, the ability to manipulate your Avaya telephone from your PC. We actually wrote an app about 8 years ago to do that. That's still in production. And then we have our tech support group 100% tied into a multicast application that drives queuing as problems come in and the distribution of those problems to people. So that's the reason why our network is multicast enabled. One of the reasons anyway. So, go ahead.
Is your use of video more domestically intensive, or is it more? Do you find it more even more applicable to Asia Pac and?
Yes, absolutely. I would think we've had some of our biggest growth in the Asia Pacific area. What I've actually done is I've broken my support organization now. Asia Pacific is now part of the support team for Microsoft OCS. We're actually implementing a solution there and training them now because of the usage necessary in the Asia Pacific area. Plus, I don't want to be woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to solve a problem over there if I don't have to be.
Right, and so is OCS more applicable as opposed to LifeSize because of the cost factor and bandwidth?
I think it works the same way. I think if it's person to person, or that type of environment, they're going to use desktop. But there are a lot of people that are doing one-on-one with LifeSize, where they go to the conference room, they schedule a conference room, and they do it. I would have to admit that most of our conference room stuff, LifeSize stuff, it's really bound by quality, the desire, the need. We get a better quality experience with our LifeSize than we do with our desktop stuff. So most of our large executive level sales meetings and those types of things are all done via LifeSize, our room systems.
What's your cycle on giving people computers? Do people at SAS get a new computer every month?
No.
Every year?
Wouldn't that be nice? Our documented model is 3.5 years for a laptop, 4.5 years for a desktop. We always look at R&D first, in terms of new upgrades, because they're developing software for the new platforms, and we propagate their hardware down.
And do you have a problem with running desktop video on some of the older laptops and stuff? I mean, is that an issue?
Most everything we have is less than 4 years.
Well, that's still in laptop.
We haven't seen a lot of problems at this point. If I have to say what's going to hit us first is network, the latency or the jitter and those types of things. And it's hard for people to separate the two. If you really want to know the truth about it, all they know is it doesn't work. Now, what we have a problem with on the PCs, and it's a challenge that I'll talk about, is application prioritization, the ability. At SAS, every user is an administrator on their PC, which means they have the ability to change things. So we have problems with application priority. We have problems with the screen lock not monitoring activity on the camera and the voice over IP, and the screen locks in the middle of your call, the ability to answer a call through a screen lock, because you have to unlock your PC to get to it to answer it. So we're dealing with a lot of those issues, but most people have accepted the desktop video just like they have the cell phone. They realize it may not always be perfect. They accept that occasional word and ask people to repeat things just like you would on a cell phone. So, one of the biggest, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, everybody probably has a very similar list, but this is a lot of the things that we look at when we make a decision. Is obviously return on investment, global availability, best of breed. And even with the UC, I don't want to lose these things. I want to maintain specifically the best of breed, because sometimes all of Microsoft's solution may not fit every model, all of Avaya's solution may not fit every model, all of Cisco's may not fit. I want the ability to pick and choose, but I also don't want to pay an arm and a leg for all this stuff.
But Russ, so ease of use is not a criteria?
Yes and no. And the reason why I say that is because I think everybody in this room will agree that's where we've got to go. Okay? So I'm going to look at it as part of the testing. I'm going to let the users, but we have some pretty difficult stuff that we use today that people adapt to. And I think all of this stuff is ever changing. What's today isn't the same thing you're going to have tomorrow, and that's part of my job, is that if the solution fits all the other criteria that are more important, I can work with the vendor to hopefully drive change. If not, when it comes up time to renew, I'm probably going to go elsewhere, to somebody else.
So if you come across a product, and I agree with you, new technology is always not easy to use and mesh with. What do you use to overcome that barrier? Do you provide training to
Yes.
users?
What we'll do is our internal education department will work with us to create training videos,
Right.
small little snippets, 5 minutes or less on various functions. The company will provide training. We use WebEx to record it, and then we store the recordings out there for people to view at any given time. And we're actually starting to look at some of the stuff that I think Lifestyles was talking about storage where we can actually go in and index clips, so we can say, okay, the discussion on how to do X begins here, the discussion on how to do Y here, so that users can come back and refer to this. And it's all that's driven through our help desk organization, who kind of correlates all this stuff together and creates a library for all of the stuff. So, and again, this is just our vision. There's a lot of subtopics to each one of these categories, but you can see simple user interface. And this isn't really in order. But these are all areas. The simple user interface does with the fact that I'd like to have a single client everywhere. You know, I like for it to be point and click type of stuff. I want the users, if they're doing it on the PC, when they walk over here and do it on the mobile device, it's a very similar experience. This also comes into play in our conference rooms. We're in the process of building a new building. And in that new building, all the conference rooms, there are no remotes. There's no whiteboards. There's no projectors. Everything in this building is automated. We have plasma televisions. We have Crestron controlling it all. This building is an effort to try to integrate some of this simplicity into the user interface, where it's really just pressing a button on a Crestron remote and the room reacts to the needs of the users. So we're moving to a different philosophy in this new building versus what we've done in the past, with having 4 remotes laying on the table and it being a more manual process. Big battle, big discussion. There's no doubt in my mind that I could go spend the money, get a single vendor solution today, that within the world of SaaS, it would work. I'd have less problems. It still wouldn't fix the SaaS to non-SaaS world. I still think interoperability would be an issue there. Getting to the single vendor solution is expensive, because a lot of the stuff that I already have that's working fine would have to be replaced. So we've had this over the last 18 months, this battle, and finally, about a year ago, I just made a decision that interoperability was the way we were going to go. We're going to leave the stakes in the sand. We're going to keep using the vendors that we use today, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to push interoperability. Thus, my interest, and I've been very vocal. I mean, with LifeSize, with Avaya, with Microsoft, I haven't hidden my thoughts. I meet with them on a regular basis to share information with them, and they know this is the direction that we're headed. A lot of these we've already talked about, but this is probably one of the bigger ones. Now, this isn't new to IT. I've been in this for 30 plus years, and finger pointing is definitely been one of my most fun events to have to deal with. In the early days of dealing with the carriers, when you couldn't have one carrier, you had to have AT&T and a local LEC. You know, the local LEC would point at AT&T and AT&T would point at the local LEC. Well, I'm stuck in the middle. I don't really care which one would fix the problem. Fix it. So I have several examples that we'll talk about in a minute. I understand this is the philosophy, you know, but my level of importance here is that I want people to acknowledge this, but I want people to sit down with us and help us. And I have several examples where it's cost the company millions of dollars because that didn't happen. So, talking about the challenges, B2B with Intercall or trying to get to a voice over IP based solution, we're voice over IP at SAS. Intercall is voice over IP. I have to use the PSTN to get there today. The only way I can put in a data connection is to extend with AT&T my data private VRF. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to take my private secured VRF and move it into a company. So we've struggled for at least a year, if not more, trying to figure out how to keep my packets going to Intercall from being converted back to the PSTN, back to IP, you know, and it's been a struggle. And I think I finally came up with a solution that at least AT&T is happy with, that they actually had available and did not even realize it. Intercall's now looking at it to see if they can do it. It would only work with AT&T. So both Intercall and SAS would have to be on AT&T to make it work today, but it's something that they already have available. They just have to say, yes, you can use it, and work with us to get it up and running so that we can get to a true IP-based interface between us and the business vendors that we do business with. Obviously, then I can look to extend this to my customer base. You know, so if you're an AT&T customer and you want to communicate with SAS via SIP, IP, this would work. So I know there's a big meeting going on right now in Cary with AT&T to talk about it.
Will that save you money?
Yes. It will take my per minute cost of using Intercall down to well under 1 cent a minute. So yes, it will save me tons of money. With little return, with little investment, because I already have everything.
Right.
I already have MPLS. You know, so we just got to work through the details of how do I deliver a call from SAS via the public VRF that AT&T has to Intercall and not use my private. So that's a big one. Data sharing, I've brought this up with a couple people. First, I'll say I haven't debugged the problems. I haven't even brought it up with Lifesize yet, but we've not had very much success, say even SAS to SAS, doing data sharing. So we use web conferencing for that today. And unfortunately, what's happening is the video is now shifting over to WebEx because WebEx has now introduced the HD quality video solution in there, which works quite well. So I see a lot of this business moving over. So we've got to get back to playing with this. I mean, even simple PowerPoints. Our R&D organization love to use this because they like to use video because of the language barrier and the fact that the Asia Pacific folks don't say no. We have 2 huge development centers in Asia, one in China and one in India. So they love to be able to see their facial expressions to understand if they understand what's being said. So they need the ability to do data sharing and video simultaneously. And it would simplify their startup process if I could get them both on the same device. So,
Russ, the data sharing, I see I'm having problems with data sharing.
mm-hmm.
What is the data sharing, is it embedded graphics, is it motion video, is it
we haven't got to the embedded video yet. It's all really graphics or it's just simple presentation stuff. And there's so many dynamics associated to the problem that I just haven't had the time to debug it yet. It may not even be a life-size problem. It may be something else. At this point, we've just not spent a lot of time looking at it. It just doesn't work well and people have a bad taste in their mouth. So to eliminate getting people more upset with video, room system-based video, we just don't support it. We encourage everybody to use web conferencing until we get a chance to get back and play with this.
This is data sharing across
video,
OCS and life-size?
No, just life-size to life-size right now. Because within OCS, we don't have to because you have collaboration as part of the tool. So it isn't really, it's using IP bandwidth, but it's not using part of your video, the bandwidth that you have to find.
Now, how's your experience with having OCS users coming to the life-size immersive rooms?
We don't have immersive.
So the life-size are...
Just room systems.
Okay.
Right, room 220s, that kind of, oh yeah, absolutely, fine. There are a few idiosyncrasies that we're still working on with life size that we're all aware of. One being from the room system calling back to an OCS and searching through a directory of 11,000 people to try to find the person you're interested in talking to. So there's some idiosyncrasies that we're still working on, but overall, our users, this has been active. We've been on beta code. Long before they announced GA, we had people that were using the beta code, that this was so important to them. And they were willing to take it once or twice it would fail and then have to restart it because it was so important. It's our work from home people trying to attend manager meetings in conference rooms where the group systems are installed. This just gives them the whole new dynamic that they didn't even have before. So we're still, this one, the B2C for video IP performance, I really just think it gets a little frustrating. There's 10,000 reasons why there could be a problem, some of many which not have anything to do with SAS. So I think it's really just, it's a user experience issue that we've just got to address, and hopefully bodies like this one and others can help us work through. I know Polycom and LifeSize both offer algorithms, though as long as you're talking to another Polycom or another LifeSize, there's special code in there that helps you deal with packet loss and jitter, et cetera, et cetera. But, I would say 75% of the time, I'm not talking to another like system. When I'm talking LifeSize out to a non-SAS vendor, it's usually to a different system. And it just doesn't. Those algorithms don't work then, and we're just bound by a lot of the issues that are occurring across the internet.
Russ, could you define for your B2C, are these HR323 endpoints that are coming in via firewall traversals? Is that how you,
We're not even going to bring up the traversal stuff. We've played with LifeSize, we've played with Polycom, and we've actually went to a static NAT environment at SAS where we go through and give us internet routable IP address and assign it through the firewall and statically define it to make it work at this particular moment at SAS. And we've just found that people understand that so much better and it works so much easier. Most of this is when we talk to other companies, they don't even know what their internet routable IP address is. They have to go, it's just kludgy. You have to test in advance. We're in the 3-day model because we have to get a person's name at the company. We have to call them. We have to get their information. It just doesn't work very well seamlessly with a person at SAS just walking into a conference room, going through a process with a customer and it just working first time from an H323 perspective. So, and this is also true, and I'll speak to it later with OCS and federation. The whole federated component required within OCS. We're not at links yet. We're working on it, but we don't even have the ability. We're not federated with a company from an OCS desktop perspective, we can't communicate with them at this particular moment. So, and then MPLS. There, it's really simple. I mentioned it the other day, where the carriers just aren't interfacing at handing off MPLS at the private sector. So it's one, I know we're working there. AT&T is working on a video with immersive, the ability to work, the B2B with video and stuff. But we just yet have not had, we're doing all the retagging ourselves. So in country, most of the countries in Europe and Asia, it's cheaper to take in country MPLS, and then we pick one of the sites and we carry in a global MPLS connection and we retag, at our router. And we just don't have a lot of, and I understand why, SLAs, et cetera, but at some point it'd be nice to get to a standard so that everybody can do MPLS at least at a core level the same way, and then we can get rid of the PS10. But until that happens, it's going to be very difficult to get rid of the PS10. On-premise, off-premise, been a battle for years, going to continue to be a battle. There's pros and cons in both directions. We've gone both ways with audio conferencing. Right now, audio conferencing is working well for us as an off-premise service. So I want my UC solution to be able to support an off-premise audio conferencing. I've looked at on-premise. Web conferencing, Cisco's come and exposed me to their new web node on-prem, but it's got to be an all-Cisco solution. So I got to go to Cisco Audio, Cisco Web, on-premise, and right now it just doesn't fit into my business model. And again, I have to have the UC solutions interoperate with the off-premise. So I have to have audio conferencing work with intercom. You know, I don't want to offer my employees multiple ways of doing things. They just don't understand. Because if they use OCS and it's only on a federated basis, and then they want to bring in somebody from the outside that we're not federated with, it's not going to work. So they got to shut the call down and go crank up an intercall. It's just easier just to do it all one way. And then I don't have to worry about trying to teach people the if this, then that type of algorithm.
Would you consider an off-premise UC solution?
Yes. Yes, I would. And we've started having discussions. We've started looking at the possibility of taking our Exchange out and our voice out. I don't think it's going to happen, as Pfizer indicated, in the next 2 years. I would be surprised.
What about OCS? Off-prem?
Yes, we've talked to a couple companies at Links, where we may have a hybrid solution. We may keep OCS Links in Cary because of the mass of people located here, but in our Asia Pacific realm, carry it off-prem. And we've had discussions about can we be in that hybrid mode and it all look like one company, and the answer to that question is yes. Have we tried it yet? No. But it is on the radar scope for the next couple of years to look at. And it's really going to come down to cost. At this point, SAS doesn't normally lease things. We proved a long time ago that if you're going to keep it for a long enough period of time, it's cheaper to buy it. But I think some of these discussions may change that philosophy as we move forward. We spent some time talking about this yesterday. We have the same problem. I do agree that a lot of our early video conferencing troubles was associated to the lack of ability to schedule, the user interfaces being poor, people having difficult time understanding why it doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. When we were H320, the problem was getting it connected. Once you got it connected, it worked. I mean, it wasn't the best quality at 3 to 4 KB, but it worked. Now we have the whole issue of IP performance, you know, trying to debug quality issues, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, we have the automation startup and joining, which we spoke with both of these yesterday. They're important. They're discussions that we've been having with all the major vendors. We actually have some potential solutions that we're working on that we can hopefully deliver. But this is also a challenge, too, because we have to standardize internally our naming conventions for conference rooms, naming conventions for equipment, et cetera, which we have in the US, in Canada, and Latin America. We just don't have it in the rest of the world. So we have a year's worth of work just trying to get that sorted out. Modular messaging. We were modular messaging from Avaya. We've now switched to UM. It was taking a full FTE to support MM between Avaya and Microsoft Exchange. We threw in the towel. We gave up. So we switched to UM with the and the other problem was that Avaya would lag 6 months plus behind supporting the new versions of Exchange. So we ended up switching to Exchange, assuming that the interface of UM to Avaya would be less troublesome than it was the modular messaging component to Exchange. So we completely switched. We're in a globalization. Okay, this will be fun. Avaya VPN IPsec is an example of the finger pointing. We've lost over $1 million because the VPN IPsec solution from Avaya wouldn't work with Cisco's VPN concentrators. And it took us probably 18 months to convince somebody that it was their problem. Once we convinced, we had a fix, and we're testing it now. But it's almost 2 years has gone by at $500,000 a year because we're trying to convert all our FWA employees over to MPLS, over to being part of the Avaya PBX. So that one's been a huge one. That was a major example. I'm not going to talk about phone sets. They're a challenge in itself. We've already talked about the tunneling between the PBXs. That was another finger pointing situation. We never could get everybody to work together to help us figure it out, so we just gave up. And then now we're in the process of trying to get everything converted over to a IP-based plan. And I think we're going to be successful. It's just really more an internal problem than an external problem. But since we've standardized on a common communications vehicle, I think that'll be a whole lot easier. Mentioned this yesterday, get to a single client across all platforms. I've today got Skype, Avaya soft phone, life size, video, desktop video, OCS. I have 10 different applications on my PC, and it isn't fun. And I have been playing with enterprise voice, and actually was very successful with it using it from the room last night. So we are playing with single clients. That is our long-term goal. Already mentioned a couple of the problems that we're having: screen lock through active call, answering through a screen lock, which we've talked to Microsoft about both of those. And then the whole desktop to group system, which I've already talked about, that we worked with LifeSize very successfully. We tried to do the Tandberg VCS. It didn't work. It would work Tandberg to Tandberg or OCS to Tandberg through the VCS, but when you tried to bring in LifeSize on the other side of the VCS, could never make it work. And we were already, again, I told you I'm working on things in parallel. We were already working with LifeSize on their SIP-based solution. We just threw in the towel on the other direction because we figured this was one less piece of component hardware to fail.
When you say SIP-based solution, are you referring to OCS SIP?
Well, I'm not gonna, yeah, I'm assuming so because they're working with Microsoft SIP, so I would assume that's what it is. So, I mean, I don't have to have a piece of hardware in the middle now. My LifeSizes and OCS.
My understanding is LifeSize has supported SIP for a long time.
But this,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
It's an interoperability.
It was, yeah.
It's SIP versus Microsoft SIP.
Yes.
Interoperability.
Yes.
Put a spin on it?
Yes, they put a spin on it. Yeah. So we don't have a piece of hardware in the middle. They're both talking to each other directly, no gateways, which I love that because I don't have another piece of hardware to worry about.
Right.
So and it's the way it should be. Now, I'm not agreeing that we should have 47 different protocol stacks. You know, I mean, it would be nice if we all get to at least a common core.
Well, that's the purpose of this group.
Right.
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, to interoperate with any of our with any vendor here, sometimes, you know, it's an understanding the interpretations of a particular implementation, so.
Absolutely. But, you know, it would be nice if we could get a core-based set of functions all working the same way. Then if each vendor wanted to add special functionality on top of that, it may sway you to buy all their solution versus an interoperable solution. That's fine, but I think at some point, we've got to come to some simple understanding of traditional communications working together and then let people add on to the top. Federation, Lord help us, it's an issue. It's an issue across the spectrum. It's not only an issue of trying to set up a federation. Then once you federate, if you're not the same vendor solution, you can do IM and presence, but you can't do anything else. You know, I'm in total agreement with the whole presence availability thing. I'm not an advocate of presence in the form that it's being used, even though a lot of people are at our company. I think availability makes a whole lot better solution. Anonymous communications, basically that's the ability for me to communicate with people through my UCE-based applications when we're not federated with them at all. This is just an anonymous phone call that I want to work and have working. I don't want to pick just on like OCS and remote call control is what RCC stands for, which is the ability for OCS to manipulate our VIA telephone. It was a mistake. I should have never done it. But users were asking for click and call capabilities so they could manipulate phone numbers from the PC. This is what was there. We were told it was going to work in links. It don't work in links. And it may not work from the client ever. So we're already in search of an alternative for RCC. We've probably got a year's worth of time, probably more than that. We probably got about 18 months invested in just getting OCS RCC to work with AES. Now, we're probably 6 months into trying to make Links RCC work with a VIA AES. I just got an update last night that we got to upgrade the AES server to 6.something, 6.2 to even go back to playing again. So it's just been a disaster. And now I wish I'd have never done it. And Links video, it's the same. What's going to happen there is if we keep RCC and Links, we can't do video, desktop video. So you can't have both. It's one or the other. So I either got to go to enterprise voice to get video back, or I got to give up RCC. So it's creating an interesting dynamic. I wouldn't have thought people would be using it, but we have a lot of people using it. So pretty much a couple slides. These are all the projects just this year for the 35 to work on, and we talked about conclusions yesterday. So.
Very interesting.